Her mother told her she wasn't good enough, not pretty enough, not strong enough, not worthy of the family name. So they gave the wealthy marriage to her younger sister and shipped her off to marry a black single father in a town she'd never heard of, a man they called beneath them, a man they laughed about over dinner. But what none of them knew, not her mother, not her sister, not even she herself, was that the man they threw her away to was someone the entire financial world answered to, and by the time they found out, it was already too late. The dining room smelled like roasted lamb and old money, or at least what Clara's mother wanted people to think was old money. The chandelier was a replica. The silverware was polished every morning, not because guests were coming, but because Margaret Davis believed that wealth was a performance and every detail had to be perfect, even when no one was watching. Clara sat at the far end of the table, her plate barely touched. Across from her, Vanessa was laughing at something on her phone, her blonde hair catching the light in that effortless way that always made Clara feel like she was sitting in someone else's house. Their mother stood at the head of the table. She never sat during announcements. Sitting was for conversations. Standing was for verdicts. "I've been in contact with the Harrison family," Margaret said, smoothing the front of her cream blouse. "Richard Harrison's son William is looking for a wife, and I've arranged for one of you to meet him this Saturday." Vanessa looked up from her phone. Her eyes sharpened the way they always did when money entered the room. "The Harrisons?" Vanessa set her phone face down on the table. "They own half the commercial real estate in the city. Mom, that's incredible." Margaret smiled. It was the kind of smile she reserved for moments when her plans were falling into place. "William is 29, Yale educated. His family has been in the social register for 3 generations." Margaret's voice carried the reverence most people saved for prayer. "This is the kind of opportunity that doesn't come twice." Clara looked at her mother. She already knew the answer, but something in her still hoped. "Which one of us?" Clara asked. Margaret didn't even glance in her direction. She kept her eyes on Vanessa. "Vanessa, obviously." The word "obviously" landed on Clara's chest like a stone dropped from a height, not because it was cruel, but because it was casual. There was no hesitation, no consideration, just a fact of nature like gravity or weather. "You'll wear the navy Valentino," Margaret continued, now fully turned toward Vanessa. "I'll schedule a hair appointment for Friday afternoon, and we need to talk about your conversation topics. The Harrisons are old-fashioned, so nothing too political, nothing too, 'What about me?'" Clara's voice came out quieter than she intended. Margaret finally turned. She looked at Clara the way someone might look at a stain on an otherwise clean tablecloth, with mild irritation and the quiet confidence that it could be dealt with. "I've made separate arrangements for you, Clara." Something about the way she said separate arrangements made Clara's stomach tighten. Not separate as in different, separate as in lesser. "There's a man in Millfield, a town about 4 hours south. He's looking for a wife, and I've agreed on your behalf." Clara blinked. "You agreed without asking me?" "I didn't need to ask you. This is what's best for everyone." "Who is he?" Margaret waved her hand, the gesture small and dismissive. "His name is Marcus Thompson. He's a single father, 1 child. He lives modestly." Vanessa let out a short laugh. Not a mean laugh, worse, a pitying one. "Wait," Vanessa said, leaning forward. "Is he the one Aunt Linda mentioned, the black guy in that little nowhere town?" Margaret's jaw tightened, but she didn't correct Vanessa. She simply redirected. "The arrangement is practical. He needs a wife. Clara needs stability. It works." "Mom." Clara's hands were flat on the table now. "You're sending me to marry a stranger in a town I've never been to, a man I've never met, because I'm not good enough for the Harrisons." Margaret's eyes hardened, not with anger, with efficiency. "Clara, let's not make this dramatic. You spent 2 years barely able to get out of bed. Your health is fragile. Your appearance is, well, Let's just say the Harrisons expect a certain standard. Vanessa meets that standard, you don't. That's not cruelty. That's honesty. The words should have hurt more than they did. But Clara had been absorbing these kinds of cuts since she was 15 when her autoimmune condition first surfaced, and her mother began treating her like a piece of furniture that no longer matched the room. Every flare-up, every hospital visit, every month she spent too exhausted to leave the house, Margaret cataloged all of it. Not as suffering, but as depreciation. Clara was damaged goods, and damaged goods got sent to the clearing shell. Vanessa stood up from the table and walked over to Clara. She put a hand on her sister's shoulder, a gesture that might have looked like comfort from a distance, but up close it was something else. It was a closing statement. Don't think of it as a downgrade, Clara. Think of it as, I don't know, a fresh start. Vanessa's smile was polished, practiced. Besides, maybe it'll be good for you. Less pressure, no one watching. You can just be ordinary. Clara stared at her sister's hand on her shoulder. And honestly, Vanessa continued, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret, I looked him up. The guy's got nothing. He lives in a 2-bedroom house and drives a truck that's probably older than I am. I mean, I don't want to be rude, but come on. A single black dad in a dead-end town. That's not exactly the future Mom planned for either of us. Vanessa. Clara's voice was steady now. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. No. You're saying what makes you feel taller. Vanessa's smile flickered. For a fraction of a second, something real crossed her face. Not guilt exactly, but recognition. The kind of look someone gets when they hear their own voice played back to them and don't like the sound. Then it was gone. Vanessa straightened up and turned toward the hallway. But before she disappeared around the corner, she said something that Clara would remember for months. You know, I didn't choose this either. Mom picked me for the Harrisons. She picked you for Millfield. Neither of us got to decide. The only difference is my cage is prettier than yours. And then she was gone. The hallway swallowed the sound of her heels on the hardwood, and Clara was left sitting alone at the long dining table, staring at the replica chandelier, wondering when her family had started treating love like a transaction and daughters like currency. Clara spent the next 3 days doing something she hadn't done in years. She sat with the decision, not fighting it, not crying about it, just sitting with it the way you sit with a diagnosis you already suspected but hoped wasn't true. She packed one suitcase. She didn't pack anything her mother had bought her. On the morning she was supposed to leave, Margaret stood by the front door holding a cup of coffee, watching Clara load her things into the car. She didn't offer to help. She didn't hug her. She simply said, Millfield isn't the end of the world, Clara. It's just not the beginning we hoped for. Clara closed the trunk. She looked at her mother, really looked at her, and saw for the first time not a villain, but a woman who had built her entire life on appearances and was now too deep to climb out. Margaret Davis didn't hate her older daughter. She simply couldn't afford to love something that didn't increase her value. Goodbye, Mom, Clara said. Margaret sipped her coffee. Call when you get there. I want to know you arrived safely. It was the closest thing to tenderness Margaret had offered in years, and Clara knew it. She also knew it wasn't enough. It hadn't been enough for a long time. She got in the car. She didn't look back.
The drive to Millfield took 4 hours and 12 minutes. Clara counted because she had nothing else to do. She didn't play music. She didn't call anyone. She just drove, watching the landscape change from manicured suburbs to strip malls to open highway to something quieter. Farmland giving way to forest, billboards getting fewer, the sky opening up like someone had pulled back a curtain. Millfield wasn't what she expected. It wasn't the run-down, forgotten town her family's tone had implied. It was small, yes. One main street. A hardware store, a diner, a library with a hand-painted sign. But it was clean, lived in. The kind of place where people recognized each other's cars and waved even when they weren't sure who was driving. Clara pulled up to the address her mother had given her. A white two-bedroom house with a front porch, a small yard, and a truck in the driveway, dark blue, older model, but well-maintained. There were flowers along the walkway, not expensive flowers, just marigolds and daisies planted in a neat row by someone who cared enough to kneel in the dirt. She sat in the car for a full minute, gripping the steering wheel. This was it. The man her family had decided was her level, the life they believed was all she deserved. She got out of the car. The front door opened before she reached the porch, and the man who stepped out was not what Clara had prepared herself for. Not because he was tall, though he was, not because his presence was striking, though it was, but because of the way he looked at her. There was no hunger in it, no pity, no sizing up. He looked at her the way you look at someone you've been expecting, calmly, with patience, as if he already understood that this moment was hard for her and he was giving her space to breathe through it. Clara. His voice was low and even, the kind of voice that didn't need to be raised to fill a room. "Yes, I'm Marcus." He extended his hand. Not a hug, not a step too close, just a hand, steady open, waiting. She shook it. His grip was firm but not forceful. His palms were warm. "Come in," he said. "Lily's been asking about you all morning." Clara followed him inside. The house was small but immaculate. Bookshelves lined the living room walls, not decorative books chosen for their spines, but real books, read books, with creased covers and dog-eared pages. History, philosophy, finance, poetry. There was a child's drawing taped to the refrigerator, a stick-figure family with 3 people, one of them labeled Dad in crooked purple letters. The third figure had no label. And then she saw her. Lily was 5 years old, with dark brown skin, wide, curious eyes, and braids that someone had done with obvious care. She was sitting on the living room floor with a coloring book, but she had stopped coloring and was now staring at Clara with the unfiltered intensity that only children possess, part curiosity, part judgment, entirely honest. "Hi," Clara said. Lily didn't respond. She looked up at Marcus. "It's okay, baby girl," Marcus said softly. "This is Clara. She's going to be staying with us." Lily considered this information with the seriousness of a diplomat reviewing a treaty. "Does she like waffles?" Lily asked. Marcus looked at Clara. The corner of his mouth moved, not quite a smile, but close. "Do you like waffles?" he asked. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Clara felt something that wasn't dread or obligation or the weight of being someone's disappointment. She felt the beginning of something honest. "I love waffles," Clara said. Lily went back to coloring, and just like that, without ceremony, without performance, without a single chandelier in sight, Clara's new life began. The first week in Millfield moved slowly, the way time does when every sound is unfamiliar and every room still smells like someone else's life. Clara slept in the guest bedroom, a small room with a single window that faced the backyard and a quilt on the bed that had been washed so many times it felt like silk. Marcus hadn't called it her room. He'd said, "This is where you'll sleep. Make it whatever you want." She hadn't made it anything yet. She was still learning how to breathe in a house where no one was watching to see if she breathed correctly. Marcus had a routine, and it was precise. He woke before sunrise. By the time Clara came out of her room each morning, Lily was already dressed, her braids freshly retied, and breakfast was on the table. Not elaborate breakfast, eggs, toast, fruit, sometimes oatmeal with cinnamon. But everything was laid out with a kind of quiet intentionality that Clara wasn't used to. In her mother's house, meals were performances. Here they were just meals, made with care, eaten without commentary. Marcus didn't ask Clara to do anything. He didn't assign her roles. He didn't say, "This is what a wife should do in this house." He simply lived his life and left space for her to figure out where she fit. It should have felt cold, but it didn't. It felt like the first time someone had trusted her enough not to hand her a script. Lily, on the other hand, was a different kind of welcome. The little girl didn't give Clara space, she gave her tests. Small ones. the kind only a 5-year-old could design. "Can you braid?" Lily asked one morning, standing in the bathroom doorway with a comb in her hand. Clara looked at the comb, then at Lily's hair, then back at the comb. She had never braided hair like Lily's before. She didn't know the texture, the tension, the technique, and in that moment, standing in a small bathroom in Millfield, with a 5-year-old staring up at her, Clara felt something she hadn't expected, not incompetence, but ignorance. The realization that there were entire worlds of knowledge she had never needed to learn, not because they were difficult, but because her world had been so small and so white that they simply never came up. "I don't know how," Clara admitted, "but I can learn if you teach me." Lily narrowed her eyes, assessing whether this answer was acceptable. Then she handed Clara the comb and sat down on the floor. "Daddy watches videos," Lily said matter-of-factly. "He wasn't good at first either." Clara smiled. She knelt down and tried. She was terrible. The parts were uneven, the braids too loose. Lily reached back twice to correct her grip, but when it was done, lumpy, imperfect, and slightly crooked, Lily ran to the mirror, looked at herself, and said, "It's okay, you'll get better." It was the most generous thing anyone had said to Clara in years. By the second week, Clara started noticing things. Not big things. Marcus wasn't the kind of man who revealed himself in grand gestures. He revealed himself in details, the way a river reveals its depth, not by its surface, but by the things that move beneath it. He walked Lily to school every morning. The school was only 3 blocks away, but he walked her to the door, knelt down, fixed her backpack straps, and said the same thing each time: "Be kind, be curious, come home safe." Clara watched from the porch the first few times. Then she started walking with them. Nobody told her to. She just did. It was on one of those walks that she overheard something that unsettled her in a way she wasn't prepared for. A woman on the sidewalk, white, middle-aged, pushing a stroller, saw Marcus kneeling to tie Lily's shoe and said to her companion, "That's Marcus Thompson. He's the best father in this whole town, I swear." Clara heard it clearly, and her first instinct, the very first thing that moved through her mind before she could catch it, was surprise. Not at the compliment. At the fact that she was surprised by the compliment. She had expected something else, something less. And the reason she had expected something less had nothing to do with Marcus, and everything to do with a picture her family had painted long before she ever met him. She didn't say anything about it. But that night, lying in the guest room staring at the ceiling, Clara replayed the moment over and over. She thought about how Vanessa had described Marcus, a single black dad in a dead-end town, and realized she had carried that description into Millfield like luggage she hadn't bothered to unpack. She had expected less of him. Not consciously, not with malice. But the expectation had been there, sitting in the back of her mind like wallpaper she'd never thought to question. It was the first time Clara understood that prejudice didn't always look like hatred. Sometimes it looked like surprise when someone exceeded a standard you didn't even know you'd set. 3 weeks in, something happened that Clara couldn't explain. She was sitting on the porch reading while Lily colored beside her. Marcus was inside. His phone rang. Clara could hear it through the screen door. She didn't mean to listen, but the house was small and the walls were thin. Marcus answered the way he always answered, "This is Marcus." But within seconds, his voice shifted. Not louder, not angry, but different. The warmth drained out, and something else took its place: precision, authority. The kind of tone Clara had only ever heard from people who sat at the top of very long tables in very large rooms. "That's not what we agreed on," Marcus said, his voice carrying a weight that didn't match the 2-bedroom house he was standing in. "Tell Reynolds the terms don't change. If he has a problem with that, he can call me directly, but he won't, because he knows what happens when I restructure." Clara's hand stopped on the page of her book. She looked at Lily, who hadn't reacted at all, as if this was something she'd heard 1,000 times before. Marcus came back outside a few minutes later. His face was calm again. The warmth returned like a man putting on a familiar coat. "Everything okay?" Clara asked. "Old work," Marcus said. He sat down in the chair beside her and picked up one of Lily's crayons. "Nothing that matters here." He started coloring a butterfly in Lily's book. Lily corrected his color choice, "Butterflies aren't gray, Daddy," and the moment dissolved into something ordinary. But Clara filed it away. The voice, the name Reynolds, the phrase restructure. They didn't fit the life she was seeing, and she was beginning to suspect that what she was seeing wasn't the whole picture. The following Saturday, Marcus took Clara to the farmer's market. It was Lily's favorite outing. She had a specific route she liked to walk, starting with the honey stand and ending with the woman who sold kettle corn in paper bags. Clara was carrying a bag of peaches when she noticed a man approaching from the opposite direction. He was out of place, dark suit, polished shoes, the kind of watch that cost more than Clara's car. He was walking with purpose, eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on Marcus. The man stopped. His posture changed immediately, shoulders back, chin slightly lowered, the subtle body language of someone recognizing authority. He crossed the remaining distance quickly and extended his hand. "Mr. Thompson," the man said. "I didn't expect to see you here. I was actually driving through on my way to Charlotte and—" "Not today, David." Marcus shook the man's hand, but his tone was polite and final. The kind of tone that closed a conversation the way a period ends a sentence. The man nodded. "Of course. My apologies." He glanced at Clara, then back at Marcus, and something in his expression shifted, not curiosity but deference, like he was making a mental note to remember her face. "Enjoy your weekend." He walked away without another word. Clara watched him leave. She looked at Marcus. He was already turning back to Lily, who was tugging his arm toward the kettle corn stand. "Who was that?" Clara asked. "Someone from a long time ago," Marcus said, and then he smiled at Lily and said, all right, kettle corn it is." Clara didn't push, but she noticed that Marcus hadn't said the man was a friend. He hadn't said he was a colleague. He had said, "someone from a long time ago," and the man had called him Mr. Thompson, with the kind of respect people usually reserve for courtrooms and boardrooms. A month passed, then 2. Clara stopped counting the days. Millfield had a rhythm slower than anything she'd known, but honest. She started volunteering at the library twice a week, helping with the children's reading program. She learned to braid Lily's hair properly, still not as well as Marcus, but close enough that Lily stopped correcting her. She cooked dinner some nights, and Marcus cooked on others, and they fell into a pattern that wasn't romantic yet, but was something just as rare: mutual respect between two people who hadn't asked for each other, but were learning not to regret it. She also started to see Marcus more clearly. He wasn't quiet because he had nothing to say. He was quiet because he'd learned that most people talked to fill space, and he preferred to leave it open. He read every night after Lily went to bed, thick books about economic systems, global markets, things Clara wouldn't have expected on the nightstand of a man in a small-town 2-bedroom house. One evening, she walked past his door and saw a letter on the desk, heavy paper, formal letterhead, the logo of a corporation she recognized. The letter was addressed to Marcus, and the opening line used the word chairman. She only saw it for a second before she looked away, but the word stayed with her. She didn't ask about it, not because she wasn't curious, but because she was beginning to understand something about Marcus. He would tell her when he was ready, and pushing him would only prove that she valued information more than trust. Clara was folding laundry when her phone rang. It was Vanessa. They hadn't spoken since Clara left. The call came without warning, the way Vanessa always operated, on her own schedule, assuming everyone else would adjust. "Clara, I need to talk to you." Vanessa's voice was different. The Polish was still there, but underneath it, something was cracking. "About what?" "The Harrisons." Vanessa exhaled sharply. It's not what I thought it was going to be." Clara sat down on the edge of the bed. She didn't say, "I told you so." She didn't feel any satisfaction. She just listened. "William's family is broke, Clara. Like actually broke. The house, the cars, the country club membership, it's all leveraged. They're drowning in debt. And they married William off to me because they needed access to our family's assets. Mom's assets, whatever's left." Clara closed her eyes. She thought about the night at the dining table, the Valentino dress, the social register, 3 generations of prestige that turned out to be 3 generations of smoke. "I'm sorry, Vanessa." "Don't be sorry. Just don't tell Mom yet. I can fix this. I just need time." Clara wanted to say that some things couldn't be fixed by performing harder, but she knew Vanessa wasn't ready to hear that. So she said, "Okay." And the call ended, and Clara sat in the small guest room of a 2-bedroom house in Millfield and thought about how strange it was that the life her family had called a punishment was turning out to be more real than the one they had called a reward. The visit came without warning. That was Margaret's style. Arriving unannounced was a power move, a way of saying, "I don't need your permission to be in your life." Clara was in the front yard with Lily planting new marigolds along the walkway when the silver sedan pulled up to the curb. Margaret stepped out first, wearing sunglasses and a linen blazer, looking at the house the way a health inspector looks at a restaurant searching for violations. Vanessa got out of the passenger side, arms crossed, her face tight with something that might have been embarrassment or anger or both. Marcus was inside. Clara knew he could see them from the kitchen window. She straightened up, wiped the dirt from her hands, and walked to the curb. "Mom, Vanessa, you didn't call." "I didn't realize I needed an appointment to visit my own daughter," Margaret said. She took off her sunglasses and looked past Clara at the house, the yard, the truck in the driveway. Her expression was the kind of neutral that was worse than disgust. It was dismissal. Everything she saw confirmed everything she already believed. Vanessa stayed quiet at first. She looked thinner than the last time Clara had seen her. The Valentino confidence was gone, replaced by something brittle. Marcus came out to the porch. He didn't rush. He walked out the way he walked everywhere, steady, unhurried, present. He nodded at Margaret and Vanessa. "Welcome," he said simply. Margaret looked at him the way she might look at a waiter who had seated her at the wrong table, politely, but with the clear understanding that this arrangement was temporary. "You must be Marcus," Margaret said. "Thank you for taking care of Clara." The way she said it, taking care of Clara, made it sound like Clara was a package that had been dropped off, not a person who had chosen to stay. Marcus didn't react. He held the door open. "Come inside. I just made coffee." They sat in the living room. Margaret perched on the edge of the couch as if she was afraid the furniture might stain her clothes. Vanessa sat beside her, eyes moving around the room, cataloging every detail the way she'd been trained to, assessing value, finding it lacking. Lily came in from the yard, dirt on her knees and a marigold in her hand. She stopped when she saw the strangers. "Lily, this is my mother and my sister," Clara said, kneeling beside her. "Say hello." "Hello," Lily said, holding the flower tighter. Margaret looked at Lily the way she looked at most things that didn't serve her agenda, with polite indifference. Vanessa didn't look at Lily at all. The conversation started small. Margaret asked about the house, the town, Clara's routine. Each question was a measurement. Each answer was weighed and found insufficient. But the real moment came when Vanessa finally spoke. She was standing by the bookshelf, running her finger along the spines, when she turned to Clara and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "I mean, it's comfortable, I guess, for what it is. Not everyone needs high standards." The room shifted. Clara felt it. Marcus felt it. Even Lily felt it, though she was too young to name it. Vanessa wasn't just talking about the house. Her voice carried the same tone she'd used at the dining table months ago. The practiced casualness of someone who believed that tearing others down was the same as building herself up. Marcus set his coffee cup on the table. He looked directly at Vanessa. Not with anger, not with defense, with the steady level gaze of a man who had heard worse from more important people and had learned long ago that some words said more about the speaker than the subject. "Standards are interesting," Marcus said, his voice even and unhurried. "The ones people talk about the loudest are usually the ones they struggle the most to meet." One sentence. That was all. Vanessa opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came. Margaret looked away. The room held its weight. Clara felt something crack open in her chest, not pain, but relief. She had spent her entire life watching people speak to her family with deference they hadn't earned. And here was a man who had just taken apart her sister's condescension with 7 words and a steady voice without raising his tone, without breaking composure, without needing anyone's validation. End quote. They left an hour later. Margaret drove. Vanessa sat in the passenger seat with her arms crossed, saying nothing. Clara stood on the porch and watched the silver sedan pull away, and she felt something she hadn't felt in their presence in a very long time: certainty. Not about Marcus, not about Millfield, but about the fact that she was done performing for people who only saw her when they needed something to look down on. But the visit had left a mark on someone Clara hadn't considered. That night, after Marcus put her to bed, Lily got up again. Clara found her sitting at the top of the stairs, clutching the stuffed rabbit she slept with her face tight, in that way children's faces get when they're trying very hard not to cry. Clara sat beside her on the step. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Lily didn't look at her. She looked at the wall at the framed photo of Marcus and Lily at the park, the one where they were both laughing so hard their eyes were closed. "Does your sister not like Daddy because he looks different?" Lily asked. The question was so direct, so unguarded, that Clara felt it land somewhere deep behind her ribs. "Lily?" She kept looking at him like he was wrong, Lily said. "Like we were wrong." Clara put her arm around Lily. She pulled her close and felt the little girl's body relax into her, trusting her the way children trust completely, without conditions. "Your daddy is one of the best people I've ever met," Clara said. "And the way someone looks at him says everything about them and nothing about him. Do you understand?" Lily thought about it. Then she nodded. "Can I sleep in your room tonight?" Lily whispered. "Yes," Clara said. "Always." She carried Lily down the hall and tucked her into the guest bed, the quilt that had been washed 1,000 times wrapping around them both. Lily fell asleep within minutes, her breathing slow, and trusting one hand still holding Clara's sleeve. And Clara lay there in the dark, listening to this child breathe, and realized that this small, unscripted moment was the first time in her life she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Margaret's final move came 3 weeks later. A phone call early morning before Marcus left for Lily's school walk. "Clara, we need to discuss your grandmother's trust." Clara's stomach dropped. She knew about the trust. Grandma Louise, her mother's mother, had set it aside before she passed. It wasn't a fortune. $50,000 held in a trust with Clara's name on it. Grandma Louise had been the only person in the family who looked at Clara without measuring her. She used to say, "You don't need to be useful to be loved, sweetheart." She died when Clara was 20, and the trust was the only thing Clara had left of her. "What about it?" Clara's voice was flat. "Vanessa needs it." Margaret's tone was the same one she used for all her ultimatums, calm, logical, immovable. "The situation with the Harrisons is worse than she told you. There are debts, significant ones. If we don't resolve them, it'll be public, it'll humiliate the family." "The family?" Clara repeated. "You mean it'll humiliate you?" "Don't be selfish, Clara. That money is sitting in an account doing nothing. Your sister's marriage, your sister's future is at stake. If you don't help, you're choosing to watch your own sister drown." There it was, the weapon Margaret had always wielded better than anyone: guilt. Not anger, not threats, guilt. The quiet surgical suggestion that Clara's boundaries were actually cruelty, that her self-preservation was actually selfishness, that saying no made her the villain in someone else's story. Clara looked across the kitchen. Marcus was packing Lily's lunch apple slices, a turkey sandwich, a juice box. He hadn't looked up. He couldn't hear Margaret's voice through the phone, but he could see Clara's face, and his eyes moved to hers, steady and questioning. Clara turned away. She walked to the back porch and sat on the step. "If I sign it over," Clara said, "I want you to understand something. This is the last thing I will ever give this family, not because I hate you, but because I'm done being the person you take from. Don't call again. Don't visit again. This is where it ends." Margaret was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice carried no emotion at all. "I'll have the papers sent to you by Friday." The papers arrived on Thursday. Clara signed them at the kitchen table while Lily was at school. Her hand didn't shake. She didn't cry. She wrote her name on the line and felt the last thread connecting her to the Davis family snap, not with a dramatic sound, but with the quiet finality of a door closing in an empty house. Marcus came home that afternoon and found Clara sitting on the porch staring at the marigolds. He sat beside her. He didn't ask what happened. He waited. "I gave away the last thing my grandmother left me," Clara said. "The only person in my family who ever loved me without conditions, and I just signed away the only piece of her I had left." Marcus looked at the yard, the flowers, the late afternoon light falling across the walkway. "My mother used to tell me something," he said. "She said people will try to make you believe that holding on is strength, but sometimes the strongest thing you can do is open your hand and let it go." Clara looked at him. "Is that why you live here? In this small house? In this small town? You let something go?" Marcus didn't answer right away. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his hands clasped together. "Lily's mother left when Lily was 8 months old," he said. It was the first time he'd ever mentioned her. "She wasn't a bad person, but she couldn't handle the way people looked at us, the comments, the assumptions. She came from a family a lot like yours, Clara people who believed the world had a ranking system and she'd married down. One day she told me she loved me, but she loved her comfort more, and she left." Clara felt the weight of it, not just the story, but the fact that he was telling it to her. Marcus didn't share things lightly. Every word he offered was a choice. "I don't judge anyone for the prejudices they carry." Marcus continued looking at the marigolds as if they held something only he could see. "We all carry them. I judge people by what they do, when they finally see them, when they hold them up to the light and realize they've been wrong. That's the only thing that matters." He looked at Clara then. And in that look was something she hadn't seen from anyone in a very long time. Not admiration, not pity, not romance. Recognition. He saw her. Not the version Margaret had tried to sell. Not the leftover daughter, the fragile one, the one who wasn't good enough. He saw the woman who had just given away her last safety net, rather than stay tied to a system that had never valued her. And he respected it. Clara didn't say anything. She didn't need to. She leaned her shoulder against his, just slightly, the smallest possible gesture, and they sat there together on the porch of a 2-bedroom house, in a town no one in her family had ever heard of, watching the sun drop below the tree line, and Clara thought, this is what it feels like to be known. Not measured, not evaluated. Known. Inside the house, Lily's drawing was still taped to the refrigerator, the stick figure family with 3 people, one labeled Dad. But sometime during the last week, without Clara noticing, Lily had added a name to the 3rd figure. It said, Clara. Fall came to Millfield the way it came to most small towns, slowly then, all at once. The marigolds along the walkway browned at the edges and curled inward, and the trees on the main street turned the color of rust and honey. Clara had been in Millfield for 5 months. She no longer counted the days. She no longer thought of the guest bedroom as the guest bedroom. It was just her room, the room with the quilt and the window, and more often than not, a 5-year-old girl asleep beside her with a stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin. Clara was at the library on a Tuesday morning when her phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. Vanessa's old phone had been tied to the Harrison accounts and was long gone. Clara opened the message. "It's Vanessa. I'm outside your house. I didn't know where else to go." Clara left the library without finishing her shift. She drove the 3 minutes home and found Vanessa sitting on the front porch steps, a single suitcase beside her. No Margaret this time. No silver sedan waiting at the curb with the engine running. No sunglasses, no linen blazer. Just Vanessa thinner than the last time, her hair pulled back in a way that looked less like a style and more like she hadn't cared enough to do anything else. Clara sat down beside her on the step. She didn't invite her inside. Not yet. She wanted to understand what this was first. "William left," Vanessa said. Her voice was stripped of its usual polish like a wall after the paint had been scraped off. "The Harrisons filed for bankruptcy. The house is gone. The cars were repossessed. And William, he just left. Took what was left in the accounts and disappeared. His family won't return my calls." Clara listened. She felt something, but it wasn't satisfaction. It was the dull ache of watching something you predicted come true and wishing you'd been wrong. "What about Mom?" Clara asked. Vanessa let out a breath that wasn't quite a laugh. "Mom told me to figure it out. She said I was the one who married him, so I was the one who needed to fix it." Those were her exact words. "You made your bed, Vanessa." Clara recognized the script. Margaret had used it on her too in different words on a different day. The language of a woman who saw her children as investments and wrote off the ones that stopped performing. "I'm sorry," Clara said, and she meant it. Vanessa didn't respond to that. Instead, she looked at the house, the white walls, the small yard, the dark blue truck, and something shifted in her face. Not contempt this time. Something closer to confusion. As if the world she had built her entire identity on had crumbled, and the world she had dismissed was still standing, and she didn't know how to make that make sense. "I did everything right, Clara." Vanessa's voice cracked on the last word, and Clara realized she had never heard her sister's voice crack before. Not once, not in all the years they had known each other. "I wore the right clothes. I married the right man. I said the right things. I was everything they told me to be, and I still ended up with nothing." Clara looked at her sister. She saw for the first time not the polished weapon Margaret had sharpened, but the girl underneath. The girl who had been told since childhood that her worth was conditional, that love was earned through performance, and who had believed it so deeply that she had never stopped to ask whether the system itself was broken. "You didn't end up with nothing because you did something wrong, Vanessa," Clara said quietly. "You ended up with nothing because you built everything on something that was never real." Vanessa's chin trembled. She pressed her lips together hard, fighting the collapse that Clara could see building behind her eyes. "I still think—" Vanessa started, then stopped. She looked at the front door of the house, the one Marcus walked through every morning. "I know you think I should apologize to him, to Marcus. But I can't just turn off how I was raised, Clara. I can't just undo 28 years of—" "I'm not asking you to undo anything," Clara said. "I'm telling you what I learned. The things we were taught, the rankings, the categories, the idea that some people are worth more than others based on how they look or where they come from, that's not truth. That's fear dressed up as tradition. And it cost me years of my life. It cost you your marriage. At some point, Vanessa, you have to decide whether you want to keep carrying it or put it down." Vanessa didn't answer. She sat on the porch step of a house she had mocked 5 months ago, holding a suitcase full of whatever she had managed to grab before the life she'd been promised evaporated. Clara didn't push. She had learned from Marcus, from Lily, from the quiet rhythm of this town that some truths need time to land. You can't force someone to see what they're not ready to look at. Clara stood up and opened the front door. "You can stay tonight," she said. "We'll figure out the rest tomorrow." Vanessa picked up her suitcase and walked inside without saying thank you. but the way she crossed the threshold carefully, almost reverently, as if she was entering a place that had earned something she hadn't yet given it, told Clara everything she needed to know. The charity gala happened in late October. Millfield held one every year, not a gala, in the way Margaret would have understood the word, with champagne towers and designer gowns, but a community event at the town hall organized by local businesses to raise money for the county hospital and the children's programs at the library. Clara had helped plan it, spending weeks with the library staff designing reading kits for the children's auction. What she didn't know, what no one in Millfield seemed to know, or at least no one talked about, was that this year's event had drawn attention from outside the town. A delegation from the city had requested seats, 3 journalists had registered, and a man Clara had never seen before, tall, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than the entire auction table, was standing in the corner of the town hall, speaking quietly into his phone. Marcus was there, wearing a navy blazer Clara had never seen him wear before. He looked comfortable in it, not stiff, not performing, but natural, the way a man looks when he's returning to a version of himself he had set aside by choice, not by circumstance. The mayor of Millfield, a woman named Patricia Cole, who ran the hardware store on Main Street, took the small stage at the front of the room. She thanked the sponsors, the volunteers, the community, and then she said something that made the room go still. This year, I have the privilege of introducing someone many of you know as a neighbor, a father, and a friend. But what most of you don't know, what he asked us not to share until he was ready, is that the man who has been quietly funding our hospital expansion, our school renovation, and our library programs for the last 7 years is standing in this room tonight. Clara felt her breath catch. Marcus Thompson. Patricia continued, is the founder and majority owner of Ashford Capital, one of the largest private investment firms in the country. He has donated more than $40 million to communities like ours anonymously because he believed the work mattered more than the recognition. Tonight he's asked to say a few words, and I think we should let him. The room didn't gasp. It didn't erupt. It went quiet, the kind of quiet that happens when people are rearranging everything they thought they knew about someone they saw every day. Clara stood near the back of the room. Her hands were at her sides. Her heart was beating in a way she could feel behind her ears. She looked at Marcus as he stepped onto the stage, and she thought about every detail she had filed away without fully understanding: the phone call to Reynolds, the letter with the word Chairman David in his dark suit at the farmer's market, calling him Mr. Thompson, with the posture of a man addressing his superior. Every piece now clicked into place, not with the shock of a twist, but with the quiet clarity of something that had always been true and was only now being said out loud. Marcus stood at the podium. He didn't grip it. He didn't lean on it. He stood the way he always stood, balanced, present, still. I moved to Millfield 6 years ago because I wanted my daughter to grow up in a place where people are known for who they are, not what they have, he said. I've spent most of my career in rooms where value is measured in portfolios and market share, and I've spent most of my life in a world where people who look like me are measured by something else entirely: assumptions, stereotypes, categories that were built before any of us were born. The room was silent, not uncomfortable silence. The silence of people listening. I came here to give Lily something different. And along the way, this town gave me something I didn't expect: the chance to meet someone who reminded me why any of it matters. He looked at Clara, not at the room, at her. A few years ago, I funded a medical assistance program through my foundation. One of the recipients was a young woman with an autoimmune condition whose family had written her off as a burden. She was the only person in 3 years of that program who wrote a letter, not asking for more, not complaining about the process, but thanking us for believing she was worth helping. She wrote, "I don't know who you are, but you made me feel like I deserved to get better." That letter stayed on my desk for 2 years. Clara's vision blurred. She didn't wipe her eyes. She let the tears fall. when a mutual connection brought me word that the same young woman was being pushed into an arranged marriage discarded by her family because she didn't meet their standard of perfection, I made a decision. Not out of pity, not as charity, but because I had seen her character in a single letter and I wanted to know if the person who wrote those words was real. Marcus looked at the room again. His voice didn't waver. She is. She's more real than anyone I've ever met. And the family that threw her away, the people who measured her worth by her appearance, her health, her willingness to perform, they made the biggest miscalculation of their lives. Because the woman they called not good enough is the most extraordinary person in any room she walks into. And the man they called beneath them is standing on this stage telling you that human worth has never, not once in the history of this world, been determined by the color of someone's skin, the size of their house, or the name on their bank account. The room erupted, not with noise, but with something deeper, the sound of people standing, of chairs pushing back, of applause that came not from obligation, but from recognition. Clara didn't move. She stood at the back of the room, tears running down her face, and she understood fully, completely, for the first time what had happened. She hadn't been discarded. She had been found, not rescued. Found. By a man who had seen her at her lowest and decided she was worth knowing, not because of what she could offer, but because of who she already was. Vanessa left the next morning. She didn't say much. She stood by the front door with her suitcase, her face unreadable. Clara walked her to the curb. "I don't know what to do with everything I heard last night," Vanessa said. Her voice was small, not performed, not polished, just small. "You don't have to know yet," Clara said. Vanessa looked at the house one more time. Then she looked at Clara, really looked at her, maybe for the first time in their entire lives. "I spent my whole life believing I was the lucky one," Vanessa said. "The chosen one. The one who got the better deal." She shook her head slowly. "I was wrong about everything." Clara didn't argue with her. She didn't comfort her. She simply said, "Now you get to decide what happens next, without Mom choosing for you, without anyone telling you who to be. That's not a punishment, Vanessa. That's the beginning." Vanessa picked up her suitcase. She didn't hug Clara. She wasn't there yet, but she nodded a small, tight nod and walked away down the sidewalk, and Clara watched her go and for the first time felt no anger toward her sister. Only the hope that somewhere eventually Vanessa would find what Clara had found, not wealth, not status, but the simple, radical experience of being valued for something real. That evening, Clara sat on the porch. The marigolds were gone for the season, but the daisies held on stubborn and pale in the October light. Marcus was inside making dinner. She could hear him through the screen door, the sound of a knife on a cutting board, the low hum of music from the kitchen radio, the clatter of Lily setting the table with the focused determination of a child who had been given an important job and intended to do it perfectly. The front door opened and Lily came outside. She was holding 3 napkins folded into uneven triangles. "Clara," she said, and then she stopped. She looked at the napkins, then at Clara, and something moved across her face, not uncertainty, but decision. The kind of decision a 5-year-old makes with her whole body. "Mom," Lily said, "dinner's ready." The word landed like sunlight breaking through a window in a room that had been dark for years. Clara looked at Lily. She didn't correct her. She didn't cry, though the tears were already there, pressing behind her eyes like something that had been waiting a very long time to be let out. "Coming, sweetheart," Clara said. She stood up and took Lily's hand, small, warm, certain, and walked through the front door of the 2-bedroom house in Millfield, where the books were real and the flowers were planted by hand, and a man she had been told was beneath her was cooking dinner and humming along to a song on the radio, and a little girl who had once drawn a stick figure with no name had just given Clara the only title that ever mattered. The chandelier in her mother's dining room had been a replica. The silverware had been polished for no one. The family name had been a performance staged for an audience that was never coming. But this kitchen, this table, this man, this child, this ordinary, imperfect, unscripted life, this was real, and it was hers. You know, sometimes the people the world overlooks are the ones who see us the most clearly. And sometimes the life everyone told you was a downgrade turns out to be the only one that was ever real. If Clara's story made you feel something, if it reminded you that someone's worth was never about where they came from or what they look like, then I think you already know what to do. Subscribe to this channel because stories like this one deserve to be heard. And if there's someone in your life who needs to hear this today, share it with them. I'll see you in the next one.